came and sat next to me. You know whose book I got? In Memory of Joan Harf. It's a very busy Saturday morning, my love.
Here, look at this. We're live, by the way. I mean, I think the kids will like it.
Mm-hmm.
You
Can you send it to me,
You
or-
can use this one. Well, yeah.
Send it to my email. Or my computer.
Where did the sheets go for service?
I think they're on this table.
There's none there.
Then, I don't know.
Morning. What home? Sprayed, like over my tortillas, I sprayed like a polyurethane kind of thing. The one time I didn't keep it last night.
Here.
I know, but don't you need it?
I have mine. This Astra.
Oh, yeah, gotta stay away from the camera.
I think the first two rows you shouldn't sit in. Other than that, they're good.
Yeah, you're fine.
Can you see Craig standing right now?
Mm-hmm.
Can you see Craig standing on YouTube right now?
But right now it's just us. I'm wondering if we should just go to the library and we can do it there. Around the table versus me. I mean, it's silly. It seems a little silly to stand here and.
somebody else is here too now.
Ally.
Could be Brad, it could be Ellie, it could be Carly.
No, Brad's probably doing the. Ally.
Hey, Ellie.
Mm-hmm.
This row here, the first two rows are on camera, so you won't see that.
That's for sure.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom, Ellie.
Everything put back together from last night.
Hmm.
Everything put together from last night, or back together.
Yeah.
So much so I can't find a service sheet in there.
Oh, my.
Yeah, I don't know where the service sheets went, but
They're gone.
they are indeed.
It's 10:05.
So I'm wondering if we should do the service here or in the around the table.
Is anybody online?
Oh,
Not yet, anyway.
This is
Oh,
Mother's.
there's Joel.
His mother's going to a museum today.
Yes,
I can sit here. Yeah, she's a regular.
my fan club is on hiatus.
We're not international this morning.
Informal is fine with me.
Shabbat shalom, Joel.
Shabbat shalom, Rabbi.
All right. Okay, well, let's begin. Joel, I'm going to ask you to mute, well, unless
Got it. Hold on.
you. Very good. Let's start on page 70. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov, shevet achim gam yachad. Hine ma tov u'manayim, shevet achim gam yachad. And on page 74, thanking God for the places we live, the places we dwell, the community that we have. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Let's join together on page 75. May the one whose spirit is with us in every righteous deed be with all who work for the good of humanity and bear the burdens of others, who give bread to the hungry, who clothe the naked, and take the friendless into their homes. May the work of their hands endure, and may the seed they sow bring abundant harvest. We turn to page 76. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uvaravo nikavim nikavim, chalulim chalulim, galui v'yadua lifnei chitzei chevodecha, she'im yefatech achad mehem, o yisatem achad mehem, אי-אפשר להתקיים לעמוד לפניך, ברוך אתה אדוני, רופא כל בשר ומפליא לעשות. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. Baruch atah Adonai, rofeh chol basar umafli la'asot. And our blessing for our souls are part of us, part of that creation that makes us who we are. Elohai neshama shenatata bi torahi, ata vrata ata yitzarta ata nefachta bi, va'ata mishamra b'kirbi. כל הזמן שנשמה בקרבי, מודה אני לפניך, אדוני אלוהי ואלוהי אבותיי ואמותיי, ריבון כל המעשים, אדון כל הנשמות, ברוך אתה, אדוני אשר בידו נפש כל חי, ורוח כל בשר איש. My God, the soul you have given me is pure. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God and God of my ancestors, source of all creation, sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai, in whose hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch atah Adonai asher biyado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol b'sar ish. And on page 80, we join in our one-line blessings that thank God for the seemingly mundane and ordinary, but without which we really couldn't wake up and begin a new day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan l'sachvi vina, lahavchin ben yom uven laila. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Pokeach Ivrihim. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Matir Asurim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, zokef kefufim. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, rokah haaretz al hamayim. Amen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, המכין מצעדי גבר. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, מלביש ערומים. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, הנותן ליעף כוח. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המעביר שינה מעיני ותנומה מעפעפיי. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בצלם אלוהים. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני בן חורין. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, שעשני ישראל. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוזר ישראל בגבורה. אמן. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, עוטר ישראל בתפארה. Let's join together on page 85. I am a Jew, because the faith of Israel demands no abdication of my mind. I am a Jew, because the faith of Israel requires all the devotion of my heart. I am a Jew, because in every place where suffering weeps, the Jew weeps. I am a Jew, because at every time when despair cries out, the Jew hopes. I am a Jew, because the word of Israel is the oldest and the newest. I am a Jew, because Israel's promise is the universal promise. I am a Jew, because for Israel the world is not completed, we are completing it. I am a Jew, because for Israel humanity is not created, we are creating it. I am a Jew, because Israel places humanity and its unity above the nations and above Israel itself. I am a Jew, because above humanity, image of the divine unity, Israel places the unity which is divine. Page 86. We join in our blessing for study and for worship. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Adonai, our God, let the words of Torah be sweet in our mouths and the mouths of your people Israel, so that we, our descendants, and the descendants of all your people Israel may know you by studying your Torah for its own sake. Blessed are you, Adonai, who teaches Torah to your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, hamlamed Torah la'amo Yisrael. And we turn to 94. Baruch Shamar v'haya ha'olam Baruch Hu. Blessed is the one who spoke, and the world came to be. Blessed is the one. Blessed is the one who continually authors creation. Blessed is the one whose word is deed. Blessed is the one who decrees and fulfills. Blessed is the one who is compassionate towards the world. Blessed is the one who is compassionate towards all creatures. Blessed is the one who rewards the reverent. Blessed is the one who exists for all time, ever enduring. Blessed is the one who redeems and saves. Blessed is God's name. With songs of praise we extol you and proclaim your sovereignty, for you are the source of life in the universe. One God, life of the universe, praised and glorious ruler, your name is eternal. Baruch atah Adonai melech mehulal b'tishbachot. Page 96. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodot lahadonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, lezamer leshimcha elyon. Lahagid baboker chastecha, ve'emunatcha balelot, alei asur ve'alei navel, alei higayon bechinor. Mizmor shir liyom haShabbat, tov lehodot lahadonai, ulezamer leshimcha elyon, lezamer leshimcha elyon. Pam, do you want to do Ashrei?
Sure.
All right.
I'm gonna have to start practicing.
That's okay.
Alrighty. This is an excuse to take off the mask. Ashrei yeshvei veitecha, od yahalucha selah.
Ashrei am shekachalo, ashrei am sharonai.
Tehillah leDavid, Arom imcha Elochai chamelech, v'yavarcha shimcha le'olam va'ed.
Be'volyum avatecha, ahalala shimcha le'olam va'ed.
Gadol Adonai umchula me'od, v'ligdulatod ein cheker.
Dolador yishmach masecha, uvratecha yagidu.
Hadar kavod hodecha, v'divrei niflotecha asicha.
Ve'ezuz benotecha yameru, uvdilatcha asafrena.
Zecherav tuchai yabi'u, v'tzidkatucha yiranenu.
Chanun v'rechu maronai, el chapam chased.
Tov Adonai lakol, v'rachamav al chol ma'asav.
Yaduch Adonai kol maasecha, v'chasidecha yivachucha.
Kevod malchuto yomeru, ugvuratcha yedaberu.
Yehodir libnei Adam v'rotaha, u'chvod haram malchutoho.
Malchutecha malchut kol olamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'ador.
Somech Adonai l'chol hanoflim, v'zokef l'chol hakfufim.
Einecho elecha yisaberu, v'ata noten lahem et achlam be'ito. Sadik Adonai b'chol deravchav, v'chasid b'chol ma'asav. Ritzon yire'av ya'aseh, v'et Shabbatam yishma v'yoshien. Tila Adonai yidabir pi, v'yivarecho basar, shem katsher le'elam va'ed, v'anachnu nevareya, me'ata v'ad olam. Hallelujah.
Yasher koach. Hallelujah, 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 El Bikocho, hallelujah, hallelujah, Braki Yahuzo. Hallelujah, 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 bigvurotav, hallelujah, hallelujah, kerov gudlo. Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Hallelujah, hallelujah, beteka shofar. Hallelujah, hallelujah, benevel v'chinor. Hallelujah, 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 betov umachol, hallelujah, hallelujah, b'minim v'ugav. Hallelujah, 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 Batil Tzalei Shama, hallelujah, hallelujah, Batil Tzalei Trua. Kol hanshamate hallelujah, 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 hallelujah. Page 105. Yishtabach shimcha le'ahad malkeinu. You shall always be praised, great and holy God, our sovereign in heaven and on earth. Songs of praise and psalms of adoration become you, acknowledging your might and your dominion. Yours are strength and sovereignty, sanctity, grandeur, and glory always. We offer our devotion, open our hearts in acclamation. Baruch atah Adonai el melech gadol batishbachot el hahodaot adon haniflaot habocher b'shirei zimra melech el chei ha'olamim. We rise together for Chatzi Kaddish.
Would you like someone else to help you with the Hebrew? I mean, to, give your voice a break?
Sure, if you'd like. Do you want to help? That would be great.
It was actually Corlin's idea last night.
Perfect. I'm in. You're on. Chatzi Kaddish, page 106.
Yikadal v'yikada shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach hirute. V'yamlich malchute. V'chayechon uvyomechon. Uvchayedecho beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala. Ubizman kariv. V'maru, amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach. Le'alam ulome amaya. Yitbarak, yitbarak, v'yishtabak. V'yitpa'ar, v'yitramam, v'yitnaseh. V'yithadar, v'yithaleh, v'yithalal. Shemei t'kedusha barikhu. Le'ela mincha birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiram bi'almam. V'maru, amen. We rise for the Baruch, the call to worship. Baruch et Adonai Hamavorach. Baruch Adonai Hamavorach. Le'olam va'ed. Come back for the V'ahavta.
Perfect. Please be seated. We join together in Yotzer Or. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. Hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha barachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit. Ma rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, mala ha'aretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu al shavach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita yefa'aruch hatzela. Or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkeh chulanu mehera le'or'o, baruch atah Adonai, yotzer ha'me'orot. Ahava rabba ahavtanu Adonai Eloheinu, chemla gedola v'terah chamalta aleinu. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light blinded. We saw that inner and outer worlds are one as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed, fell back, and climbed again your Sinai of life. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael, be'ahava. We rise together for Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kevod Malchuto, Le'olam Vaed. Please be seated, and we'll continue with Ve'ahavta, please. Yeah.
And you can do the rest of the service.
Oh, you're good.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובישעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם, amen.
Page 117. Let's join together, top of the page. When justice burns within us like a flaming fire, when love evokes willing sacrifice from us, when to the last full measure of selfless devotion, we demonstrate our belief in the ultimate triumph of truth and righteousness, then your goodness enters our lives, and we can begin to change the world. And then you live in our hearts, and we, through righteousness, behold your presence. Page 121. The eternal truth is that you alone are God, there is none else. May the righteous of all nations rejoice in your love and exult in your justice. Let them beat their swords into plowshares, let their spears into pruning hooks. Let nation not lift up sword against nation, or lower word or any more. You shall not hate your brother or your sister in your heart. The stranger that sojourns with you shall be accepted as your equal, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor? Asks God. We know that the Eternal One defends the poor and upholds the rights of the needy. Praise to God Most High. Blessed is God and deserving of blessing. So we join in our song of freedom on page 122. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nehedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot, oh seifele. שירה חדשה שיבחו גלים לשמך על שפת הים, יחד כולם הודו והמליכו ואמרו, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צור ישראל, קומה בעזרת ישראל, ובדך נאומך יהודה וישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו, Kadosh Yisrael, Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We rise together for Amidah, page 124. Adonai sifatai tiftach ufi agiti hilatecha. Adonai, open our lips, that our mouths may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chatzadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chasdei Avot V'Imahot, Umevi Gula Livnei V'neihem, L'ma'an Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechaye HaKol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Mashiv HaRuach U'Morid HaGashem, Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechaye HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim V'Rofei Cholim, U'Matihir Asurim, U'Mekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Bal Gevurot, U'Midaho Mehelach, Melech Memit U'Mechaye, U'Matzmiach Yeshua, V'ne'eman Ata L'chayot HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye HaKol. Nekadesh et Shimcha ba'olam, Keshem shemakdishim ohoto b'shmei marom, Kakatuv al yad neviecha, V'kara ze el ze ve'amar, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Meloch Haaretz Kevodo. Adir, Adirenu, Adonai, Adonenu, Ma'adir, Shimcha b'chol haaretz, Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo. Echad hu Eloheinu, hu Avinu, hu Malkeinu, hu Moshienu vehu Yashmienu, berachamav leinei kol chai. Ani Adonai Elohechem, Yimloch Adonai leolam, Elohayech Tzion, ledor vador, Hallelujah. Ledor vador nagid godlecha, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated and we'll continue with Vishamru, page 132. Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat ledorotam berit olam. Uvayom hashvi, whoops. Oh. B'nei Yisrael, ti le'olam, l'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ויום השביעי שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, שבת וינפש, ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. Page 135. We offer thanks, O God, for this Shabbat, which unites us in faith and hope, for Shabbat holiness, which inspires sacred living, for Shabbat memories, glowing even in darkness, for Shabbat peace, born of friendship and love. We offer thanks and blessing, O God, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Page 137. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in thine restored, in all lands. You are our God, in whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai she'otcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. Page 139. For the expanding grandeur of creation, worlds known and unknown, galaxies beyond galaxies, filling us with awe and challenging our imaginations, modim anachnu lach. For this fragile planet Earth, its times and tides, its sunsets and seasons, modim anachnu lach. For the joy of human life, its wonders and surprises, its hopes and achievements, modim anachnu lach. For human community, our common past and future hope, our oneness transcending all separation, our capacity to work for peace and justice in the midst of hostility and oppression, modim anachnu lach. For high hopes and noble causes, for faith without fanaticism, for understanding of views not shared, modim anachnu lach. For all who have labored and suffered for a fairer world, who have lived so that others might live in dignity and freedom, modim anachnu lach. We pray that we may live not by our fears, but by our hopes, not by our words, but by our deeds. Blessed are you, Adonai, your name of goodness, and you are worthy of thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha ulecha na'eh lehodot. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. Sim, 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 shalom, sim, 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 shalom, tova uveracha. We take a few moments for silent prayer. Ose shalom bimromav, hu yaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. We take a few moments and think of all those in our lives, our community, who are in need of a blessing of healing. And as we send that energy of healing to those who continue to deal with COVID-19 and its effects, their families, their communities, and caregivers. We think too of all those who are in need of healing in all sorts of different ways, healings of body and mind and heart and spirit and soul. And we mention Greg Bennett and Michael Byron, Scott Gordon, Rebecca Gottlieb, Phyllis Levin, Jacob Adams, Pat Hanna, Irina Shepardskaya, Marilyn Weinecke, Zachary Jackson, Bruce Harrell, Gary Shapira, Andrea Kempner-Blake, the Rodland family, Terry Harris, Jerry Penn, Frank Fusaro, Matea Press, Joe Riley, Joseph Besetner, Edie Francis, Fran Porras, Jim McCann, Sheila Cohn, and Edna Fritz. If you're joining us via our live stream, please add whatever, and you would like to add a name, please do so in our chat box. If you're here in person, please share a name.
Mark Arnfeld.
We turn together to our prayer for healing, Mishaberach, on page 253. Mishaberach avotenu mekor habracha limotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach imotenu mekor habracha leavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Okay, we are going to just spend a few minutes taking a look at this week's Parsha. So it's Vayishlach, Genesis 32, beginning verse 4, page 219 of the Plout. And I will see if I can put it up on in the chat box for you if you need it. There you go. There, it's in the chat box, and you can follow along there. So this continues the stories of Jacob. Jacob is now in the position where he has left his father-in-law's house. He has absconded, basically, and he's connived his way into taking a large amount of the livestock with him. Remember, he made a deal with Lavan that said a certain color livestock he would be able to take with him. And of course, he breeds them in order that there's only this particular color that happens. And so he takes those with him, continuing his series of deceptions. And of course, now he's anxious because the time has come to reconcile with Esau, his long estranged brother. And so he sends his family in one direction, his stuff in another direction, and he goes in yet another direction. And he finds himself on top of a mountain where he has a wrestling match all night. And we don't know exactly who he wrestles with, but seemingly the text seems to tell us that it's an angel. And at the end of the match, the angel actually changes his name from Yaakov to Yisrael, which is actually a compound word meaning Yisrael, or to struggle with God. And then as we move through the story, one of the sections that we don't often get to talk about is on page 223, chapter 34, verse 1, which is the story of Dinah, which is this fascinating vignette that happens in the midst of this story, in which Dinah, who is, the Hebrew is very interesting. It says, "V'tetzei Dinah bat Leah," and went out Dinah, who is the daughter of Leah. Now, nowhere else in the text do we have somebody identified as being the daughter of one of the women, right? It's always identified as whoever the father was. That was the tradition in the biblical text, for sure. It changes in the Middle Ages in terms of identifying your Jewish status, changes to the matrilineal line. But in the biblical text, it's very clearly a patrilineal descent. And your status in the world is based on who your father was. So it's fascinating here that we have this line that she is, first of all, she's the only daughter that Jacob has, and she is the daughter of Leah. Now you know that Leah was not the favored wife. In fact, Lavan, who is Jacob's father-in-law, tricks Jacob into marrying Leah when he thinks that he is actually marrying Rachel. But and then they have the whole wedding, if you can believe it. The whole wedding experience happens, and in fact, Jacob doesn't realize it's Leah until the next morning. You can puzzle through that on your own.
It was dark.
Hmm?
It was really dark.
It was dark, yes. Despite the fact that she's supposed to be tall and she's supposed to whatever, and there's all this stuff. But in any case, we have this very interesting text in which she's known as Dinah bat Leah. And there's a whole series of conversations about why, but really, it's essentially to draw attention to the fact that this is Leah's child versus Rachel's, or any of the concubines. And now, if you follow through the text, there are several different ways of reading it. Okay. So Dinah, Leah's daughter, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women, of the local folks. And Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hivite, the local prince, saw her and took her and lay her down and raped her. Now, that's a pretty stark statement, right? It's pretty horrible. He then, captivated by Jacob's daughter Dinah and falling in love with the young woman, spoke tenderly to the young woman. And so Shechem said to his father Hamor, let me get this girl as a wife. Right? There's nothing more endearing, right? I mean, you can imagine, this is a horrible thing. I mean, why in the world would she ever want anything to do with him? I mean, At the time, Jacob heard that his daughter Dinah had been attacked and defiled. His sons were in the field with his livestock, and so he kept quiet until they came back. Shechem's father, Hamor, now went to Jacob and spoke with him, and meanwhile, Jacob's sons returned from the field, and when they heard, the men were angry and they were grieved and became extremely angry, for he had committed this outrage against Israel by laying with Jacob's daughter. Now you see how they go back and forth between Israel as a name and Jacob as a name, right? This text will continue to do that. And as we go through this, it's agreed that in fact that they can get married, that they can be together, but the deal is that the Hittites all have to go through ritual circumcision. They all have to convert, essentially, and become part of the Israelite community. And the text says that they do this, actually, and on the third day, when they are in most pain, you have these, Jacob Simeon and Levi, Dinah's two brothers, they take their swords with them and they sneak into the town and they kill Hamor and Shechem and all of the people there, and they cause this huge, disaster basically in the relationships between the Israelites and the Hittites. And this was their way of kind of seeking revenge for the rape of Dinah. And and then there ensues a whole series of dramas that happen that relate to it. But what's interesting is that this text has been revisioned and relooked at and puzzled through. And of course, what are we missing? What are we missing in this story?
What happens to Dinah?
Dinah's voice, right? Dinah's voice. We don't hear. Dinah doesn't have anything to say in the text, right? There's nothing. There's nothing here that talks about Dinah and whether she wants to go off and marry this guy or whether she wants to be participating or any of that. And it's completely gone. And so different scholars have done different stories with it. There is a way to read this text that says, in fact, actually, that the two of them, it wasn't really a rape, but that she fell in love with him, and then they tried to kind of figure this out and whatever. And what the text really means is that they had an illicit sexual experience that wasn't sanctioned, rather than being rape.
What does the Hebrews say? I mean, does it rape or is it more
Well,
ambiguous?
It's a little bit unclear, actually. So let's go back to 34, verse 1. Okay. Actually, verse 2. Vayira oto, he saw her, Shechem saw her, Ben Hamor, who's the son of Hamor, Hachivi, who's the Hivites, right? Nesei Ha'aretz, he was the prince, so his father's the king, yeah? Vayikach ota, he took her, vayishkev ota, vaya'aneha. So literally, it's he took her, which is biblical for they had sex. Vayishkav ota, he lay with her, which is another biblical form of saying they engaged in sex. Vaya'aneha, and he knew her, or he that's the one it's a little bit unclear, and I don't know if they have a comment here. Yeah, so they're saying that the verb ana, he lay with her, forcing her, but it's a bit unclear because the text really doesn't have a word for rape, essentially. So what they do, though, is there is this idea of an unmarried woman, right? And the fact that she is this unmarried woman and therefore has this status that of being a virgin, and that was idealized in this culture and community. Now, so you can read this actually differently, right? You can say, he saw her, he saw her, and he was the prince, and they had a relationship. It doesn't, I mean, and what's complicated is that the next line, says that he fell in love with her. Right? So it's a much more, I think it's a much more compelling story if it's a story about they fell in love and they had this illicit affair, and then they went to the father and they wanted to get married and all of that, right? I mean, it just doesn't make sense otherwise, because she would not have been forced. We know that from her grandmother Rebecca, who gets to choose whether she wants to, go off and marry Isaac, right? So it's not as if Dinah would have been forced to marry him. We know that. So anyway, there's lots of questions in this particular section. So Shabbat Shalom, and let's turn together to page 282 for Elena. Please rise. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, latet gedula liyotzeh breshit, shelo asanu kogoyei haratzot, v'lo samanu kemishbachot adama, shelo sam chelkenu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, v'mishtachavim u'modim, לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו Ushemo echad. Please be seated as we turn our thoughts to those who have come before us. We are in the period of Aninut for Rebecca Kaplan. We're in the period of Shiva for Bella Shevardskaya. And we observe the following yahrzeits on this Shabbat: Robert Lewin, Marcus Cohen, Maurice Cohen, Albert Brodsky, Jules Pless, Henrietta Bornstein, Jerry Aronoff, Dorothy C. Powdermaker, Solomon Rosenblum, Flora Schuster-Say, Abraham F. Cohen, Morton Newman, Martin Siegel, William Loeb, Isaac Wertheimer, Arthur Hoffman, Pauline Cohn, S. Orange, and Essa Brown. If anybody would like to add a name and they're joining us via our live stream, please add a name in the chat box. If you're here in person and would like to add a name, please do so. We turn together to Kaddish on page 294 as we rise. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divrach urtei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam u'larmeh almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudsha barichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, Damiran Be'alma Vemru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba Min Shemaya, V'chaim Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, Vemru, Amen. Oseh Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom, Aleinu V'al Kol Yisrael, Vemru, Amen. Shabbat Shalom. We are going to... somebody open the door for Eric. So we are going to just give us a few minutes, if you're joining us on live stream, to move our technology over to the library, and we'll join together in a few minutes.
Can I ask a quick question? Are you on?
Like playing. And so like Amir's really tired.
Rabbi?
Yeah.
But you know, my baby wakes up at 5:36 every morning or earlier. I don't know. He hasn't been sleeping. But I was ready to walk out the door. I'm like, okay, you're gonna bring Amir to my parents' house when you wake up, right? And he was like, no, I gotta go to work right away. You're gonna have to take him.
Where does he work?
Right next to our house.
Oh, okay.
In a bar. I was like, and I was like, you have to be at work right now? And he was like, no, but if I keep Amir here, I'm always really late. I'm like, what? You just need a little
Where
bit
do
of
you live? Do you
discipline.
live in this area?
Well, yeah, it's really close. But then, like, his barber shop is like cattywampus. It's like adjacent to the house. So it's really close.
What street do you live on?
Body. Well, he stayed. I split my time between like my family's house and then like his house. And then, like it's
okay.
small. Yeah, we grew really fast as a family, so
Gotcha.
we're buying a new house. We'll actually probably buy my parents' house, but
Oh, cool.
I spend enough time there, just enough so that my kids can go to Mill Creek. Like we spend enough nights there.
Gotcha.
Yeah, but
They go to Grandview Elementary?
they go to. She goes to Chestnut Hill. The other one she does.
Oh, okay.
Anyways, I got really close to it.
So Sue is joining us.
Yeah, definitely. Jeez.
Hey, Joel, can you try talking?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello.
1 minute here.
Can you hear me?
Okay, try that again.
Can you hear me now?
Excellent.
Quick question before we start. I was taught many, many moons ago during the Amida that you only bow for the first two Borachim, or not for that. And when I was sitting with Dennis during veterans, Shabbos, he said the same thing, that you only
I
bow
learned the same
first.
thing. But yeah, Joel, I agree with you. That's what I learned growing up too.
And you're much younger than I am, Brad.
Yeah, I actually once questioned Rabbi Bush on it. I said, "Why do we only do the first two and not the third and fourth?" He goes, "Because that's how it is." That was his answer. So
Yeah, I mean, traditionally, actually, you would. So beginning, you would bow at the start of the Amidah, right? Baruch atah Adonai, right? And then
I can barely hear you. I don't know if it's my computer or what. Let me see if I can get this up a little bit.
if I can change this.
Any better?
Is that any better?
Yeah.
Okay. Let me just see if this is. Hold on. Hold on. Really?
I cannot hear now. Oh, now I can hear.
Which does make all the difference.
Well, that is unusual.
So, oh boy.
So I'm just bringing up Safari. Where are we?
I think we're on Chestnut Hill.
Six.
Yeah.
Yep.
This is still alive on YouTube.
How's the baby doing?
It's so good. Some of it today.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I'm tired.
Relatable.
No, it's so good. He's eating good. He's putting on weight.
Nice.
Okay, can you hear us now?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay. Excellent. All right, so let me just find the text for you there.
And they had asked a question about the Amidah. I remember what I learned was that we don't bow at the part that's referring to death. And whatever it is.
Right. I mean, traditionally you would bow at the Baruch, right? So
Right.
because you're bowing to God, right? Then at certain points there. So it's Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, but for whatever reason they only got to the first two. In traditional stuff, but in other settings you did three, and then when we started including the women, then we started doing it for the women also, because it didn't make sense if you were going to bow for the guys not to bow for the women, you know, and so it really is kind of an up in the air kind of. It's all custom anyway. There's no rules around or laws around bowing anyway. Okay, so here we go, chapter 6, and we'll put that in chat. Okay, and here comes Andy.
Just watching myself on the camera.
Watching the back of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what took me a moment.
So I've got the camera, so people that see
Right.
people online can see who's here, and then I've also got another camera that's just on
The way to
me.
do it.
So, hey Andy.
Hi.
Rabbi, I have a request. The Torah study link seems to have been dropped from the weekly announcement. If that could be reinserted, that would be very helpful.
I was going to ask the same thing, Sue. I'd actually go back to September to find a link for today.
Right.
What do you mean?
Go ahead, Brad.
In the weekly emails where they announce the services and the Torah study and everything, then there's no longer a link in for the Zoom.
There is.
No, there isn't.
Fascinating.
And while it's the same meeting every time, there's no way to bookmark a Zoom meeting, unfortunately.
But hold on, let me look. Okay, I found last week's one. So it's right next to the, here, hold on. I'm going to share my screen. So here's last week's email, which has the thing about Veterans Day and blah, blah, blah. And then it has the service sheet, which you can click on that. Or you can click on Join Shabbat Services and Torah Study via YouTube, or click on to join via Zoom.
Okay. I must have been looking at a previous, I wasn't looking at this one. I was looking at a previous one. I had deleted this one.
This is last week's actually, but, and then if you click on the actual service sheet, are you seeing the service sheet?
I am. I think my problem was as I was looking at this week's.
That was what and then if you look at the service sheet has two links. It has a link via Zoom and a link for YouTube.
Okay.
Okay. But so hopefully, I mean, I thought we continued to include that. So
I didn't get that one with this week's. I got it with the November 4th one was the last one I got that piece with.
so you didn't get.
No service sheet on this week's email.
Right.
I'll
Okay.
forward it to you later.
Yeah, please, because then something definitely didn't go right. Okay. All right, here we are. Okay, there's a lot of background noise, so if you can mute yourselves unless you are making a comment, that would be fabulous. Okay, here we go. All right, if you want to make a comment, just unmute yourself. We are on chapter 6. And if you haven't been part of the service, we'll join in our blessing for study. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Okay. So, chapter 6, we have. Now, Jericho was shut up tight because of the Israelites, and no one could leave or enter, which means, of course, that the city was under siege. That's really what that's referring to, is you have a city that was closed up. And very common occurrence in the ancient world, where cities that you would, basically cities had walls around them. And in order to protect the inhabitants, those walls would have been sealable so that you could protect the people living in the city. Now, the complication was that very often the water sources, for instance, weren't necessarily in the city walls, which of course created enormous potential issues because you need water for people and everything else. So, for instance, the city of David, which is basically becomes Jerusalem, has a water supply that is about 1 kilometer outside the city, and several sieges ensue in which the water supply is cut off, and so what eventually happens is King Hezekiah builds a tunnel that goes from the city to the spring, it's called the Gihon spring, and it's a kilometer long built tunnel, and then he closes up the access to the spring from above using huge boulders, basically huge cut stone, kind of blocking it in so that nobody could sort of dig down to get at it. And you can actually, when you go to Israel today, you can walk that tunnel. And at different times of the year, it's higher or lower or warmer or colder. And it's really a fun sort of experience. We usually take kids with candles, and it's but it's an amazing architectural feat because they actually, and it's described beautifully in James Michener's The Source. Which, by the way, if you haven't read that book, that is one of the most outstanding sort of histories of Israel that you'll be able to read. It really is it follows the what it does is it takes an archaeological dig, and you go all the way to the bottom of the dig, and you find this one artifact that's at almost prehistory, and then it goes up through the layers, and it finds different artifacts, and then it expands on the story. It's really an amazing book, written I think in the early 60s even. I mean, something like that. I mean,
What's the guy's last name?
James Michener, who, if you like history, was, I mean, he was just unbelievable. It is about as inaccurate as a historian as it is a novel. I mean, he just wrote amazing stuff.
1965.
There you go. Okay, good. Yeah. And holds up, and absolutely holds up. I mean, it really
It
is.
absolutely, I would say it absolutely holds up, but I went back to reread it. I read it years ago, and I find the attitude towards women is very dated, and it was hard to swallow. But other than that, the history was good. So just be forewarned for anyone who reads it. Yeah.
I haven't read it in many years, but that's interesting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I could see that, you know, coming out of that context, it would be difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. All right. So Jericho is besieged, and God says to Joshua, okay, look, Natati beyadecha, I'm going to give in your hand Jericho. I'm going to hand you Jericho. The king of Jericho, the warriors. So let your troops march around the city and complete one sort of rotation or you know, one circuit around the city. And do this for 6 days with 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horns preceding the ark. So in other words, God, what is God really saying to them? Make your shtick. You know, you've got to do something that's going to be like, they want to show, right? You're going to have the ark, you're going to have the priests in full regalia. I mean, this is the equivalent of, you know, full-scale army band coming out and, you know, playing the music and whatever, you know. Okay. On the 7th day, so you're going to do this 6 days in a row, right? So 6 days in a row, you're going to, something in my master is making a pitch. Okay. For 6 days in a row, you're going to march around the city doing this performance. On the 7th day, you're going to march around the city 7 different times. And you're going to have these priests blowing these horns. What horns are they blowing actually? Shofar, yeah, exactly. Now you can imagine, like, picture this scene, right?
So they're not taking a break then? Like, if they're doing something else 7 days. I mean, they're
Well, they're going once around the city
okay. Oh, I thought it was
each day,
okay. Oh, okay.
right? Each day they're going once around the city.
Mhm.
And it probably wasn't all that big. I mean, Jerusalem, which is a metropolis,
Mhm.
is basically 1 square mile.
Mhm.
So, you know, it doesn't take you all that long to walk all the way around it, you know.
Why 7?
Well, 7 is one of the kind of mythic numbers, right? You have 6 days of work and 7th day of rest. You have 7 days in the week. 7 is an important number. There are 7 holes or entryways of senses into your body, right? You have 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 noses and 1 mouth. Not 2 noses, but 2 nostrils. You know, two entryways into the nose. And that encompasses all of your senses, right? Your sight, your smell, your hearing, taste, all of that, you know. So 7 is an important number in the biblical text.
For sure, it's used over and over again. Okay, so on the seventh day, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they started on they started on Sunday. It doesn't necessarily say that. So the seventh day could have been any one of the days. We're not sure. We do know that if it's going 6 days in a row plus 7, then one of them is going to be Shabbat.
Yeah, that's what my question was. Like, that's what I was questioning. So like there was maybe because God commanded it, but that's exactly what they do. Maybe there's like a discrepancy, but like if they're carrying things, that's, I mean, I know those like laws came later, but
Right.
different to see it in the text where it's not.
Right. It seems that the text is sort of totally ignoring Shabbat completely.
Mhm.
Right. You would have thought that the text would have said, do it for 6 days. On the seventh day is Shabbat and take a rest. And on the eighth day, go ahead. Right. That would make a lot more sense. But that's not what we have. Right. So, we don't have, I don't have a good answer to that, by the way.
Yeah, but when you're fighting a war, you don't take a break for, the Sabbath.
Yeah.
It's a 24-hour, 7-day-a-week job.
You ever see that movie, The Frisco Kid? So it's a fabulous movie. Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford. Yeah, Gene Wilder and Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford is the cowboy. Gene Wilder is the rabbi from Eastern Europe who's traveling across the country, and he's a bank robber actually. The other guy, Harrison Ford's a bank robber, and he robs the bank, and of course the posse is after them. And then Friday night comes, and Gene Wilder won't ride the horse, and so they walk, and it's Saturday night, and it's getting dark, and the sun is starting to go down, and they can see the posse coming after them in the distance, and and it's this, you see the sun going down, and the cowboy character is saying, "All right, now, not yet, now, not yet, now, not yet, now," and they go. It's actually a fantastic. It has so many wonderful scenes in it. It's an amazing. It's just the other thing is he gets to Pennsylvania, and he's on his own, and he doesn't know what to do, and he doesn't speak any of the language, and he sees Amish, and they're wearing the same black hats and black coats, and he thinks exactly what he says, right? So he comes screaming across the fields, going, "Landsman, Landsman," in Yiddish, and they get up to him, and suddenly he sees they're wearing a cross or something, and he totally faints. It's fantastic. Also very dated, but cute. Okay, so on the seventh day, we march around the city 7 times with the priests blowing the horns. We're making a whole big production. And when a long blast is sounded on the horn, Brad.
I'm sitting in my car dealership getting my car worked on. I don't think you want to be blowing the shofar right now.
Okay, fine. Again with the car? All right. So
this is okay. This is routine.
Okay, good. So when a long blast is sounded on the horn, as soon as you hear the sound of the horn, all the people shall give a mighty shout, and then the city wall will collapse, and then you can advance and take the city.
Why are we doing
Hmm?
why the big parade for 6 days?
Well, right. I mean,
Certainly wasn't a sneak attack.
yeah, no. Why this whole performance?
Yeah.
There's an intimidation factor to it. If you're going to try to siege a city, then not use the element of surprise. It's like a display of force.
It also shows that you know, God keeps telling him, I will fight your battles for you. This is a demonstration of that.
Yeah, okay. Who's the show for? I mean, it could,
Jericho.
go ahead.
Oh, the show is for Jericho. To strike fear and awe in the people of Jericho, don't you think?
Well, I think you're half right. I think
For
it's,
everybody who's gonna come after Jericho.
yeah, I think it's absolutely to do the fear and awe bit, but I don't think it's the Jericho people they're worried about.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah, it's everybody down the line that they're going to be attacking and going to battle with in the next little bit, because they want to, you know, there's nothing people give up quickly.
And gossip will travel much faster than the army.
I don't know, I kind of feel it's for we call the Jewish people at this point. I feel it's kind of for us building up our confidence, because this is probably the first time, at least that we've crossed over, that we're actually having to go to battle and face an enemy. So I think it's a confidence builder.
Absolutely could be also. You know, it could be, look, God has to, again, you know, every little bit, God's got to be proven. You know, we leave Egypt, God has to be proven over and over and over. God just got proven when we crossed the Jordan, when we stopped the water and all of that. But now again, you know, God wants to make sure that people get it. And eventually we'll, you know, not that we're slow learners or something, but you would think that they would sort of pick up and say, okay, now we get it. So God explains to Joshua, this is all what's going to happen. So Joshua, son of Nun, summoned the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant and let 7 priests carrying the 7 ram's horns precede the ark of the Lord. And he instructed the people, go forward, march around the city with the vanguard, marching in front of the ark of the Lord. When Joshua had instructed the people, the 7 priests carrying 7 ram's horns advanced before the Lord, blowing their horns, and the ark of the Lord's covenant followed them. Right? What image are you kind of getting from all of this?
Great.
Yeah.
It's very ceremonial.
Yeah, it's very formal. It's very ceremonial. It's very much a parade. You know, it's like that great scene from Monty Python. You know, when he tries to intimidate the castle by banging 2 coconuts together.
Right.
Yeah. No, you're not doing anything. You're banging 2 coconuts together. No. I've got a mighty army before me. No. You're banging 2. You know, and that's the, you know, and that's really what they're trying to do. They're really trying to create this intimidating show of force. Because what have the people heard about the Israelites, right? What do we know that they've heard about the Israelites? Because we just read it 2 chapters ago.
I think that's, we were scary deep, right? And the king gives up almost on the spot. So why the need to besiege the city if the king gave up 2 chapters ago? Why doesn't he just hand over the keys to the gates?
So another contributing idea about who this is really for, right?
Right, it's either for up the hill or it's for us.
Or it's both,
Or both.
right? It could easily be both, you know, because why not?
Right.
I mean, if you can do both at one time, all the better,
Same bird.
right? Look, I don't think it's so dissimilar from military parades in general, right? You know, a military parade is
For you
as
and
much
everybody
to
who's
give pride in your armed forces as it is to demonstrate to anybody who thinks that they might want to go up against you, that, you better be careful. Right? I mean,
That's better than North Korea.
What?
Right.
The North Korea displays, they're so ridiculous. You see footage of them.
Right. I mean, or,
No.
or when you used to, when the Russians used to parade the ballistic missiles through the, through the center of town and part of the, I mean,
It's the same thing.
it's really the same sort of experience. Okay. So we've
Did they
got,
ever say how many were in Jericho?
how many what?
People?
Living in the town?
Well, soldiers, women, children, etc.
Israelites or Jericho folk?
From Jericho.
We don't know. It doesn't really give us a sense of how big the city is.
They just said they exterminate everything in verse 21.
Right. But, so we go marching around the city. But Joshua's orders to the rest of the people were, do not shout, do not let your voices be heard, and do not let a sound issue from your lips until the moment I command you. Shout. Then you shall shout. Right? So, I mean, nothing is more intimidating, right, than, let's say, a huge group of people armed,
Absolutely silent.
absolutely silent. And the only thing these people are hearing and
And the shofar.
the shofar's blasting. Right? So he had the ark of the Lord go around the city and complete one circuit. Then they returned to camp and spend the night in camp. Joshua rose early the next day, and the priests took up the ark of the Lord while the 7 priests bearing the 7 ram's horns marched in front of the ark of the Lord, blowing the horns as they marched. The vanguard marched in front of them, and the rear guard marched behind the ark of the Lord, with the horns sounding all the time. And so they marched around the city once on the second day and returned to camp. They did this 6 days. Okay. So 6 days they do this schlep around the city, and the only thing that they're hearing is their sound of them walking and the horns. Right. Now we know that 7 is important, and that 7 is an important day, or 7 is an important number, and everything else. They don't. So what are they actually doing here? Right, the people in Jericho don't know that 7's a big deal. So you're raising the tension here, right? I mean, it's, when are they going to do something? Are they just going to march around again and again? On the first day, you expect them to march around the city ceremonially and then attack, or attack the next day or whatever. And they've done this now 6 days in a row. On the 7th day, they rose at daybreak and marched around the city in the same manner 7 times. So now on the 7th day, they're going around 7 times. So now the inhabitants have got to be thinking, okay, here we go, right? That was the only day that they marched around the city 7 times. On the 7th round, as the priests blew the horns, Joshua commanded the people, shout, the Lord has given you the city. The city and everything in it are to be prescribed for the Lord. Only Rachav, the harlot, is to be spared, because she, of course, that's her deal, right? She made this deal, and all who are with her in the house, because she hid the messengers that we sent. So Joshua is holding to his agreement. He's actually being, good about that. But you must beware of that which is prescribed, or else you will be proscribed. I'm not sure what that means, but if you take anything from that which is prescribed, you will cause the camp of Israel to be proscribed. In other words, if you do something that you're not allowed to do, you're going to bring tragedy onto the community. You will bring calamity upon it, and all the silver and gold and objects of copper and iron are consecrated to the Lord. They must go into the treasury of the Lord, which is essentially what? Essentially, the text is saying, or Joshua's instructions are saying, you can't rape and pillage. Right? You need to, anything that you find of value goes into the communal coffers. So when the people shouted, when the horns were sounded. When the people heard the sound of the horns, the people raised a mighty shout, and the wall collapsed. The people rushed into the city, every man straight in front of him, and they captured the city. They exterminated everything in the city with sword, man and woman, young and old, ox and sheep and ass. So they completely destroyed the people and anything living in the city.
So is it just 21st century eyes that finds that abhorrent, or is that some, the previous readers said, like, well, that's what you do when you ransack a city, including the livestock and the women? and the
Well,
children?
in other times that we have been told to capture a city, we've been told you can't kill the women and children. So there is some sensitivity to that, right? I mean,
And we haven't been wronged by Jericho. This is not revenge.
no, this is well, except that you know, our role now is to take
Take the land.
the land back, you know, and make it part of our
So why not
ancestral
keep
inheritance.
the ox and the sheep and the ass at the very least?
Up to your earlier point, to intimidate future foes.
And it lays out who we're going to save. You know, distinguishes Rahab and her father and her mother and her brothers and all that. It's a tough way to distinguish them.
Yeah, this is not a pleasant text, right? This is not a proud moment necessarily. I don't think it's atypical of ancient warfare, right? I think ancient warfare was very much, this is how you get rid of a problem, right? Because if you leave the people around, they're just going to come back and give you a problem later.
I thought ancient warfare, they might kill the men but keep the women.
Historically, I'm thinking more like, you know, the livestock's probably saved because you're not gonna waste it. I mean, some of this.
Well, I mean, some of it
dramatic effect.
seems like ridiculous amount of waste, right? Why kill the women and children? Why kill the livestock? It
And I
doesn't
think
make
Sue
any.
has a point. They're about the women are about the same as livestock. They're useful to take in.
They have value.
Yeah.
Well, but look, this is not 21st century. This is
Yeah,
ancient, you know, whatever. And the women weren't the fighting forces, right? I mean,
And the parts of the Torah I like best are when we distinguish ourselves from common ancient practice. Right?
this isn't it.
This is not.
But this isn't the norm either, because, you know, as Rabbi said, that you know, in other places we see where the livestock are taken, there's even the whole long Torah text about if you see a captured woman that you know, fall in love with, you can marry her, and goes down how that's done. So, you know, this isn't the normal course of warfare, I would think.
Right. So if this is not the norm, then it really begs the question as to why we're doing it this way. Right? Because there has to be a purpose to it, right? Otherwise, why? Right. And I think that we keep circling back to they're making an example here, and they want to instill incredible fear.
Yeah, that's the last line. The last line of the chapter. Okay.
Ugh.
You taking place in possession and nothing else. That is belong is not yours, You're rid of everything that is not yours.
Sorry, Lou, I missed that first part. What?
You taking land in possession, and that is not yours should be destroyed, cleansing.
Yeah, everything that's not yours, you get rid of, right?
Yes, cleansing. You clean place from everything that is not belong to the God.
Okay. But it's on the other hand, it's saying, well, by the way, take the valuable stuff, the gold, the silver,
The valuable belong to the God, but everything else is not belong to the God. You cleansing the place.
I do kind of find
Gold you can transfer from one place to another.
Yeah.
But living things, they are not, if they don't belong to the God, they don't belong.
I was just gonna say clearly, I mean, with the direction to not, all the valuables are to go into one place. You're not, gonna be running off with the candlesticks just because you think it's free. They clearly value the treasure more than the people. I mean, because everybody else, I mean, according to the text is obliterated, but the valuables are kept. I don't know, it's just very odd to me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a marked turn from the way things normally go.
So we go in and we find Rahab and her father and her mother and brothers and all that belonged to her. And they brought out her whole family and left them outside the camp of Israel. Right. So they take the harlot Rahab and they save her and her whole family and all their stuff. Right. Then they burn down the whole city and everything in it. For the silver and the gold, the objects, the copper and iron, they were deposited into the treasury, the house of the Lord. And only Rahab, the harlot, and her father's family were spared by Joshua, along with all that belonged to her. And she dwelt among the Israelites, as is still the case. What does that mean?
Her progeny is still amongst them, like her offspring.
She respect God. She respect people who with God, and she respect God, and so she was left alive. Because of her respect, she left alive.
So she's left alive, and the bargain remains in effect in perpetuity.
Yes.
So her ancestors still have this permission, if you will.
So it's a little confusing, right? They initially leave her outside the camp.
Mm-hmm.
And 2 paragraphs later, she is still among them. As if she's now inside the camp, that she's now a member of the tribe.
Looking at the commentary,
Yep.
it says that she marries Joshua and her family convert, Judaism. And so because of that, they're a part of Israel to this day.
That's how I.
Yeah, I mean, and the problem. Look, the Midrash is trying to solve the problem, right? They're trying to solve this problem. What do you mean? What do you mean that they're now living together? Well, of course. I mean, she would marry Joshua. Who else would she marry? Because Joshua's not married, and Joshua's going to make, and so then it fills it in that way. But what it really means, who knows? Right? I mean, we have no way of knowing.
I'm surprised they didn't say that means she's still alive to this very day. They've done that with some other characters.
Yep. So, and this is very clearly, also, the hope, I guess, is also that they're making an example out of her. Right? Because they're saying, if you help us, we help you. Right? if you assist us, then you get spared. That's a pretty big incentive. So they're really setting this thing up to go large scale across this land, and they're hoping that this message is going to precede them. At that time, Joshua pronounced this oath: "Cursed of the Lord be the man who still undertake to fortify the city of Jericho. He shall lay its foundations at the cost of his firstborn, and set up its gates at the cost of his youngest." In other words, they're going to be wiped out. The Lord was with Joshua, and his fame spread throughout the land. And there you go, right? And that's really what we wanted there. We wanted that message that says, okay, here's how this is going to go.
Here's how Israelites deal with you if you help and help us out, or turn.
And if the prostitute can help us out, anybody, right? I mean, it's so interesting that it's got to be the harlot, right? Why? Because it's the most removed from anybody military, right? So it's at the very other end of the scale. So if the prostitute can help you out,
What Hebrew word? Because I missed this one. I was in the hospital giving birth on that week. I know, right? What is the Hebrew
and
word?
you think
for-
we're going to go back just because of that?
What's the Hebrew word for harlot? Like, is it
Zonah usually, but
is it like accurately
hold on.
translated?
Okay, so verse 25. Ve'et rachav hazonah.
Okay.
And zonah is a harlot, a prostitute.
Okay.
But I think as we've had this conversation when you were busy,
Yeah.
increasing the Jewish people, there isn't anywhere here that says that this is a looked down upon profession. It could have easily have said the baker, the butcher, the candlestick maker. Right? It doesn't. There's no pejorative here. It's just that happens to be her job. At least you can read it. One of the ways of reading it is reading it that way, right? There doesn't seem to be this kind of like negative. It's not clearly not illegal. It's clearly not whatever. And we know that there were temple prostitutes in the time of the Second Temple, and that was part of the ritual. Mhm. Well, not here.
Nice Jewish girls too.
I mean, we don't have any here, but
It's a fundraiser.
I had never heard that. I was not aware.
yeah. We don't love to talk about that, but yeah.
I just assumed she was like, her profession was thrown in there as saying, like, as you said, it's very removed from military, but I feel like it's also kind of seen as a lowly profession.
Yeah, look, it's not of the
Right,
highest.
I know, because
but it's
they're very insistent on calling her throughout the entire text, Rahab the harlot, Rahab the harlot. It's like, they don't ever just call her Rahab. So that it's a constant reminder of what she is.
So what are other women's professions?
there aren't any.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
This translation probably the innkeeper.
Right.
Which she was too.
I guess that's code.
No. Well, that's Art Scroll.
Special in.
Yeah. So that's Art Scroll, and they don't want to use the word prostitute because they're too pure to hear that, I think. No, I mean a zonah is that's not an innkeeper.
Well, a house of prostitution. So.
Yes, but but it's not quite, I mean, you're really doing the text a disservice
Right.
by simply saying, innkeeper. I mean, I think that's a bit of a stretch. Now what the role was or what the status was of somebody who that we don't know. We don't have a lot of information,
I'm sure there are PhD theses.
I'm quite certain there are, and they don't call it the oldest profession for nothing, but it's clear that, I think that, I think it's not an exalted profession, yeah? And I also think that it's the furthest away from anything military that you could get. And therefore, that's why it's chosen.
Also, the only profession I can think of for women, other than wife and child.
Right. So the other question is, why is it a woman to begin with?
Right,
Why isn't it the general
or the private,
or whatever, somebody,
state appeal. Yeah.
the butcher, the carrier of water, or whoever?
Well, why
Yeah.
isn't it? Just the fact that it's a woman makes it low.
Well, I think it's got to be a woman because the woman has nothing to do with the military. If it were a man, if it were a general, he'd have skin in the game, so he couldn't be trusted. If it were a man, they get the men to fight. But this woman doesn't have an interest in, she's not a player when it comes to fighting. And that's why a woman is important.
You mean she's a lover, not a fighter?
There you go. Yeah.
I just think the word is hysterical. I don't know why. Harlot is just a funny word.
Well, and that's the English though, right? That's the English trying to, nicen up the word prostitute. Right? I mean, that's just, call her whatever you like. I mean, this is, we know what she's doing, and whether or not that was exalted or looked down on in society, we're not sure. Right? We just don't really know.
It feels like it's just a job. In the
I-
text.
yeah. Yeah, we just don't know. So, okay. Well, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Thank you.
You're welcome. We'll see you. Take care, everybody.
Bye, Sue.
Bye.